Marv is still concerned that this might not be an actual alternate timeline, but just possibly still their own future, resulting from some impending failure that they might not get the job done. Nope, not using that. Hello there, heroes! I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. I realize I'm sporting a bit of a different look today, representing the orange iguanas. Unfortunately, my old reviewer's suit has seen the end of its usefulness. I am working on a new one. I'll keep you updated on how that's going. This session review is not going to be an easy one, and not just because I don't have my regular reviewer's uniform. The Hyperforce Rangers have arrived in Corinth, and let's just say the tone was very reflective. So let's gather up our feels and take a look at the 6th session of Hyperforce, A Nest of Vespers. As the Rangers take stock of their situation, they wonder if this might possibly be their future. Maybe they don't go on to defeat the Alliance, and this is the result of all that. M tells the Rangers about the Venjix virus, how it spread through the world's computers and took out most of their technology. They wonder if this is what happened to Alpha if Alpha was infected with the Venjix virus, and also worry if their Zords and Morphers are vulnerable. Jack asks M why Corinth is so important, why everyone has to get there, and she tells them that a message has been constantly repeating, telling everyone who is still alive to make their way to Corinth, the last safe place to be. However, they have to hurry, as defensive shields are about to raise around the city, and after they go up, no entry will be possible. They see M's vehicle, an old beat-up orange pickup, and realize that this probably isn't the future that they came from. Marv decides that they should probably therefore keep information about where and when they come from close to the vest, though Chloe does gently remind him that they have already let it slip to these people that they are Power Rangers. She and Marv decide to try a good cop, bad cop routine to get some information from the people. I'm not entirely sure why that's necessary, but okay. They see a well-coiffed man sitting in the driver's seat of a very nice RV and decide to get some information from him. Marv pretends that his bearings are entirely off. You know, my watch it's working, it's broken for a while. What's today's date, anyway? The man, one Chaz Winchester, tells him, yeah, it is some 2009. Marv says that the two of them are from Balin City. That might be an RPM reference. I don't really remember, and it doesn't sound familiar. And that things are so different here. I mean, goodness gracious, is this even Earth? Chaz says, of course it is, and slowly rolls up his window. Marv runs back and tells his team what he's learned, that this is Earth in the year 2009. Except it doesn't take a history geek like Eddie to realize that none of this actually happened in what they know of 2009, so the team realizes that they have landed in a different timeline. M says that they need to get going, and they all pile into her truck, with Chloe taking up both shotgun seats and making everybody else pile in the back. M starts talking about how vital it is that they stay sheltered, and when the Rangers ask why, she points out that there's more to worry about than just the polluted atmosphere. Jack is sitting on a radiation scanner, basically a Geiger counter, and there's pockets of intense radiation all around them. And this is not the turning into lizards or gaining superpowers type of radiation. This is the getting gamma sickness type of radiation. Marv is still concerned that this may not be an alternate timeline, but still their actual future, resulting from some kind of failure that they may experience down the road. As Vesper bails into the truck, worried about the radiation, even though it's still rather low levels at the moment, M explains how power plants shut down, industry ground to a halt, and then, most concerningly, strange robot soldiers called grinders started appearing and taking things over. Vesper proposes heading back to the time ship and getting out of Dodge. Chloe agrees, feeling that this isn't actually their timeline, so they don't have any real responsibility to it. Marv disagrees, however, saying that they need to help these people. They can't just abandon people who are in need, besides, of course, feeling like this still might be their future, a result of their failure, even though Chloe tries to insist that this is another dimension. Besides, Eddie checks the homing beacon for the time ship on his morpher, and while he is picking up the signal rather strongly, they are moving out of range of it, so it would be difficult to get back to the time ship even if they wanted to. Em doesn't mean to eavesdrop, but she kind of can't help but overhear their conversation, seeing as she's sitting right next to them, especially Marv mentioning that they can't abandon these people because they are Power Rangers. Em says that she does know about Power Rangers, but the ones that she knows about are called Ranger Series Operators and were created by a secret organization. This triggers Marv to realize that if there are Power Rangers in this world that they don't know about, then this is an alternate dimension, a different timeline where things happened differently. And also, if there are Power Rangers in this world, there's hope. There's a chance to fight back. The Rangers start making plans to meet up with their counterparts in this timeline, because I guess in an alternate timeline you don't really have to be as concerned about changing history. And Em confirms that she was hoping to find those Rangers in Corinth. She was actually part of the secret government think tank that put the RSO program together. However, she never actually saw them become the Power Rangers. By the way, why is she telling them all of this if she was part of a secret government organization? The way she sees it, the world is ending. There's no real point in keeping secrets now. Em starts describing the RSOs, but she's cut off by the message telling people to come to Corinth. She says that this message has been playing twice an hour on every single communications frequency. Marv is still thinking about the RSOs, saying that if there are Rangers in this dimension that are able to morph, they must be connected to the morphing grid. Malika calls a timeout here and makes him roll for this, since in her view, Marv should not know what the morphing grid is. He says that was actually just a term that he came up with off the top of his head last week. However, Peter rolls a Bolt 6 anyway, so Malika says he must have heard about it from a teacher or a classmate or something. The Rangers wonder what they can possibly do against what seem like really overwhelming odds. Vesper suggests taking the entire planet, loading it into their time ship, and going back to their time. An idea that was apparently inspired by getting into some of Chloe's rather old candy stash. As they near the edges of a small town, Eddie calls her outside, kicking Marv into the truck when he makes a snarky comment about this. Eddie's checking on Vesper to see if she's okay, seeing as, she just suggested putting an entire planet inside of a time ship, but her response isn't actually what he was expecting. Vesper asks Eddie if he ever feels like he's special, different, made for something else. She reveals that she was adopted, and so she never really felt like she had her own family. She thought that might change when she found this Ranger family, but it hasn't. She still feels like she's just different somehow. Eddie tells her that they're all different in their own way, and those differences are what make them all awesome. The others kind of cough-talk him to say, "Tell her that hers make her beautiful." And he does so. And this actually works, as Vesper asks Eddie out. After they save time and history in the world, of course, and just so she can have the experience, right? Of course. They could go to a shooting range, and then they could go to a dojo to punch things. Of course, Eddie's totally on board for whatever she wants to do. However, she tells him that if he tells anyone, she will take that Ranger Bud's wrench and break his freaking legs. As the caravan pulls into this small town on the outskirts of Corinth, a strong swirling storm starts moving in. Em stops the caravan near a stage in the town square, saying that the Rangers are exposed sitting in the back of the truck and they need to stop. Besides that, Corinth is still 2 days away. I guess this is the outskirts of Corinth. So they should probably look for some supplies. Besides, all they have with them to sleep in are tents, but the radiation is kind of still a thing, and the tents aren't really going to help with that, so they should probably find somewhere to hunker down for the night, such as an underground basement or a bank vault. They start exploring the city, and Jack, Marv, and Chloe go with M and find an old ice cream shop with a large walk-in freezer. No longer powered, but probably nicely lined with metal. They try to open the door, but it's really sticky and tough to open. They do manage to eventually peel the door open and find a bunch of very expired food. Marv says they can clean this thing out and fit maybe a dozen or so people inside. Jack says that he thinks they need to find something a little bit sturdier, maybe like an underground subway, but M says that this is Omega City, that reference I do get, and that Omega City just has light rail that runs above ground. Jack suggests that it would be more efficient to just use a low blaster setting on their blade blasters to just vaporize the food, which would also get rid of the smell very quickly. For whatever reason, Chloe decides to get really fancy with this, doing a backflip super shot, but she lands on some sludge and slips, Marv having to catch her, and the shot bounces around the room and only sets the food on fire, making it smell even worse. M puts the fire out with a fire extinguisher and asks what the heck they think they're doing, and just starts tossing the food out the back like a normal person. Marv calls the other two Rangers to see how they're doing and realizes the two of them are kind of getting lost in each other's attention, snapping them out of it, and the two decide to go help people. Well, Eddie goes and helps people. He helps a family gather up some firewood. Vesper, however, sees Chaz and his two stuck-up parents, notices how nice his hair is, and decides to offer him a free haircut to help him keep it nice. He's not interested, but she still pulls her blade blaster and manages to cut just a little bit off of the ends as they freak out and run away. As the storm starts to get worse, the Rangers gather up everybody and put them in the ice cream cooler, which I guess could hold more than 12 people, seeing as their group is about 21 all told. Vesper decides to try to calm the situation by telling the people some jokes. And while the Winchesters seem to be laughing more at her than with her, it does help to diffuse things a little bit. The Rangers set up a watch system with Jack and Marv going first. Marv takes this opportunity to talk to Jack one-on-one, again bringing up the situation where Jack nearly died and how that helped him realize that he forgives Jack. Jack tells Marv that, he couldn't really help almost dying, and Marv clarifies that that's not what he meant. He forgives Jack for getting him fired from the Time Force. Jack says this isn't really something they have time to talk about right this second, but he can tell Marv that he was not the one that got him fired. However, Marv can't hear him because suddenly there's a very loud hum coming from the storm. They see a shadow come out of it and approach the ice cream shop, and then start blasting it. Jack and Marv decide to stay outside and stand their ground. Eddie slams the cooler door shut, and Vesper sings a very distracting and entertaining song about them being Power Rangers from the future. However, the crowd is so starved for entertainment that they like it anyway and don't really think about what it means. However, that's when the blasts start hitting the shop, and more laser blasts start coming in from ground level. One of the blasts hits Marv in the arm, though it just stings him a little bit, doesn't really do any damage. He decides to climb up higher and get a view of what's going on. He doesn't get to the top of the building, but does elevate enough to see 5 grinders about 10 yards away. He tries to throw a roof tile at them, though it catches in the wind and spins off and nothing happens. Vesper decides to leave the cooler and go help. Malika asks if she's going to leave through the front or the back, and she chooses the front. She catches the wind and manages to sweep into one grinder, mega kicking another, and it crumbles into parts. She calls Chloe and says she thinks one or more of the grinders may have made it past her towards the building, and indeed one of them has. Chloe makes sure that M is going to keep the civilians covered and heads out of the cooler, again towards the front, and sees that Vesper is about to get attacked by grinders that she cannot see. She does a mega hurricane twirl, although all this really accomplishes is clearing out some of the sand that's on the battlefield. Another grinder runs up to attack, but Chloe knocks the two of them together, taking them out with the automatic 10 damage from her blade blaster. Interestingly, at this point, Malika says that Chloe can popcorn things to Eddie or to a question mark. Since Eddie is safely inside the cooler, she chooses to get the question mark out of the way. The buzzing sound gets louder, something starts trying to open the cooler from the outside, and 3 shots hit the back of the building. Knowing that his friends would probably, announce themselves or at the very least knock, he gathers 3 of the civilians to help him super slam the door open and then back closed. Malika says he has to roll for both, but he manages to bolt 6 on each roll, and they hear a robot crumble into parts. Eddie says it's an open and shut case. M, apparently appreciative of puns as well as slamming doors into robots, gives him a wink and congratulates him for his effort, but he says sorry, he's already got a date. Eddie calls Marv, saying that they had some trouble in the back, but he showed at the door. Marv says that it's really tough to see outside with all the sand and the storm and everything, but he thinks things are under control out there. Chloe tells him, no, they're not. There's actually one coming right towards you. Marv crouches and prepares to drop kick the grinder, but instead, Malika apparently thought that he was trying to grab it, and he missed. Marv calls back to Eddie and says that one of them got past him and is headed towards the shop. Eddie asks M to hold the door and leaves to go help, with Malika once again asking if he wants to leave via the front or the back, and he also chooses the front. He sees 2 grinders out there and ducks into the shadows for the bonus. He goes for a super serpent strike and rolls his 3rd bolt 6 in a row. He slams the 2 grinders together and takes them both out. But then M screams that she needs help right now, and they hear more shots going off at the back of the ice cream shop. You may have by now picked up on the fact that I have unsubtly been mentioning that the Rangers have had multiple opportunities to decide whether to go out the front of the shop or the back of the shop. That's because Malika was pretty unsubtle about it as well, multiple times trying to clue the Rangers into the fact that there was action taking place on both sides of the store, but it was never something that they picked up on. Eddie is the only one that heard M scream and runs back there to find the door ripped off of the cooler from its hinges, and now M is the only one that is still inside. After the break, M fills the Rangers in on what everybody watching really already realized, that every single one of the Rangers went out to the front of the store, so more grinders attacked from the back and captured everyone. M says she feels like she let everyone down since the people she's protecting were captured. As the rest of the team comes back there, Eddie fills them all in, and Marv says that no, actually it was their fault since nobody thought to check the back. As a matter of fact, everybody really starts blaming themselves for this. Eddie feels like he made the door too easy to open when he slammed it. Marv, well, really because Peter can't roll for crap lately, etc. In what was kind of a quick but actually pretty poignant moment, Jack starts looking around for the aerial vehicle and starts to call Alpha before sadly catching himself. M is still beating herself up over the situation, but Marv reminds her that these people made her a leader for a reason. Inspired, she suggests getting back into the truck. However, Marv thinks they're going to need something a little bit faster. They then see the Winchester's RV, and despite the window being partially open, Vesper decides to get in by trying to punch the door handle, which doesn't accomplish anything. They get the RV unlocked, and Vesper does manage to hotwire it. Perhaps not the first time she's done something like that. M has them drive around to the back of the building, and they see tracks leading away. After a short while, the Rangers find themselves facing a decision. The track marks they have been following are cut off by tread marks. Marv points out that the grinders so far have only used flying vehicles, so it doesn't seem like it would be them. The tread marks lead up a rocky hill towards an area that M guesses, even though she's not really familiar with the area, is probably like industrial warehouses and things of that nature. The important part, however, is that that area is in the opposite direction of Corinth. The Rangers, being heroes, decide, of course, to follow the tread marks rather than just heading for Corinth. Chloe sneaks up the hill and does indeed see a large industrial complex with 2 grinders on vehicles circling around it. Suddenly, bright lights come on a balcony near the top of the main building, and out walks a very tall, dark, robotic figure with a metal comb-over yelling at 2 of the grinders. Yes, it's Kilobyte. The Rangers realize that they need a plan, and Vesper suggests everybody else clearing out of the RV so she can drive it into the patrolling grinders. They point out that she's going to need a way out of the RV, but she seems oddly dismissive of this, almost coming off as slightly suicidal here. I mean, besides, she can always do this.
Hyperforce! Left! Ready! Power up!
M gives Vesper the fire extinguisher that she's been carrying, and the others decide to show M that Vesper's not the only one that can morph. Marv gives M his blade blaster and says to stay there and to only approach if it's absolutely clear that they need her help. She tells him that she's going to have a lot of questions when all of this is over because she was not briefed on this particular aspect of the Ranger series operators. So Vesper tells her that they're from the future. Vesper! Chloe spots some other buildings off to the side of the main type of warehouse location and says that they should probably start looking for the civilians there. Vesper drops the self-sacrificing thing for now, using the fire extinguisher to jam the gas pedal down before jumping out of the RV. The RV flies over one of the sand dunes, but then starts swerving wildly in the sand before slamming into one of the main building's smokestacks and drawing out hundreds of grinders. Marv has reservations about battling a group this large, but Jack says, "Come on, we're the Power Rangers, let's do this." He jumps up over the group of grinders and slams down with his Creus hammer, taking out a good number of them. Chloe then asks him to do, that thing where he grabs her and, throws her. So Jack tells Chloe to grab his hammer. Phrasing, Jack. And just like last time, he wildly overthrows her, way past the entire group of grinders, but she actually does land near those buildings and confirms that those are the civilians that were in the ice cream shop. Vesper's self-sacrificing kick came back pretty quick as she tells the rest of the Rangers to take care of the civilians, while she runs up to take on Kilobyte by herself. Marv tries to talk her out of this, but she runs up the stairs anyway, and he leaps down to face her. He asks who she is, and she says she's Vesper the Great, drawing her sword. Eddie freaks out for rather obvious reasons and starts to run over to block Kilobyte's sword swing. Jack tells him to jump on his hammer, which he converts into cannon mode, and fires over to Kilobyte. Eddie does successfully block the swing and tells Kilobyte sorry, she's already got a date. Marv decides to do an anime run on the grinders' heads, not doing any damage to them, but somehow ending up all the way over where Chloe was. However, the Rangers forgot to let Malika have a turn this round, and oh, Zordon was that costly this time. Kilobyte walks over to Vesper and grabs her by the shoulder. Vesper tries to back out of it, but he grabs her by the neck, and Vesper begins to feel the strength leaving her body. And then she feels like she's drifting away from it entirely. Hot energy flows through every fiber of her being, and her eyes turn red. Oh, how interesting. A robot that thinks and acts like a human. I should make more of you, Kilobyte says. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Vesper is a cyborg. And now Kilobyte has infected Vesper with the Venjix virus and has taken control of her body. Eddie yells at Kilobyte, asking what he's done to her. He says that Vesper is one of his now, and tells her to take out her little boyfriend here. And this is when Vesper starts going ham for the wrong team. She raises her Cerberus axe and super ultra hits Eddie in the side. He tries to block, but she manages to break through that block. She then uses 3 supers on her damage roll, hitting Eddie for 17 damage, which in fact means that she rolled an 11, so not even the dice were on Eddie's side here. Eddie falls, and Vesper screams internally, but she's not able to make herself stop. She converts her axe into disc mode and throws it at Eddie once again, hitting him for 6 more damage. Back over with the civilians. I know. Marv decides that since he and Chloe are together, they may as well try another one of their excellently successful team-up attacks. She'll fire up a hurricane, and anything that's not sucked into it, Marv will be able to just punch. However, his bad rolling dooms it once again, and they just kind of skid off course. Chloe pulls her Hyperion bow and fires 3 arrows at the grinders while everyone's distracted looking at Marv. Although apparently she was also looking at Marv because she really badly misses, and I'm not just talking about not hitting the grinders, she actually grazes the Winchesters. They freak out, and so does she. 3 of the grinders fire on the Rangers, but at this point the civilians are also fighting back, so it's kind of a jostle and they end up missing. Back over with Jack, he can see what's going on between Eddie and Vesper, but he can't hear it, so he doesn't know the details. He decides that Marv and Chloe are the ones that need more help, a decision I rather strongly disagree with, but hey, he's the cop. But he does fill them in on what's going on when he gets there. Jack holds up both his hammer and his blade blaster, which actually gives him the ability to attack 3 enemies at one time. Though it turns out the hammer was all he actually needed because its attack knocked into all 3 grinders and destroyed them all. Marv calls Vesper and asks what's going on. She says, "Everything's fine here. Nothing to worry about over here." But Jack informs him that Vesper attacked Eddie. She decides to throw some doubt on him, saying that, Jack has been acting rather strangely lately. This communication has clued Kilobyte into what's going on with the civilians, so he presses a tiny button, and a cage falls down, capturing the 3 Rangers and recapturing the civilians. Kilobyte then turns to Eddie and pulls his double-barreled shotgun. Eddie tries to get up, but can only get up to one knee and cannot dodge the attack, taking 22 damage. Kilobyte then tells Vesper to finish things off, and she feels that her resistance is fading. She uses her Hound of Hades attack on Eddie, though thankfully for him, doesn't roll very well for it, so it doesn't do a lot of damage. Eddie pulls out the Ranger Bud's wrench and tries to make Vesper remember. She tries to take the wrench tenderly, but instead the virus in control of her tries to take it in order to destroy it. The 2 of them wrestle over it, and while Eddie is distracted, Kilobyte slides over and hits him again, hitting him for 30 damage. This takes Eddie all the way down to 4 HP, far lower than Jack even was when he nearly died. He's unmorphed, barely conscious, as the grinders come to drag him into their factory. The last thing we hear him say as they drag him away is, "Vesper, and that's the end of the session. Okay, so where the heck do I start? I mean, of course I want to talk about that ending, but I do feel like I have to review the session as a whole, so we need to start at the beginning. I feel like things started off kind of slowly, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It gave us a very well-rounded look at the world of RPM, Corinth, and its surroundings, mainly its surroundings. We haven't gotten to Corinth yet. We see a trashed Omega City, and we get to see how the Rangers hunker down and defend a single position. The Rangers do work very well together, but we come to find out that they are not perfect or anything close. It was a very clear and critical failure that none of the 5 of them picked up on Malika telling them there were attackers on the back of the ice cream shop as well. We have to remember that 4 of these Rangers are still cadets and really learning how to be Power Rangers. Maybe Jack should have picked up on this. He was the one that's a cop and has actual experience. But number 1, it's not really in this kind of activity. And number 2, if you remember, Jack was already actually at the front of the shop, so you can't really blame him for not getting all the way around to the back. A big theme of this entire session, actually, unintentional as it might have been, was what might have been. What would have happened if the Rangers had realized there were attackers at the back of the shop and some of them had gone back to defend that side? What if they decided those civilians were as good as gone and just headed to Corinth instead? And the one that Malika actually pointed out herself after the session that clued me into this theme is that the Rangers always had the option of sneaking into the factory, instead of ramming a large RV into it and pouring out hundreds of grinders to fight. Okay, so we've covered all the rest of it, right? Okay, good, because that last battle sequence... Dude! Christina V was the star of this session, bar none. I actually wanted to call this session either Betrayal in Black or Stabbed in the Black, although none of those really work out for the title of the session, as clever puns as they are. That's why I went with what I went with. It's not just what happened at the end, though. We got to see character growth from her as she got closer to Eddie. The two actually made a date. We find out that she was adopted. In the end, we find out that was probably basically the same way that Mac from Operation Overdrive was adopted, huh? And we just find out about her feeling different, and now we know why. That, of course, ties into her cyborg nature. At least, I'm assuming she's a cyborg. Kilobyte calls her a robot, but he also says, I should make more of you, and the people that they ended up converting were actually cyborgs that were partially human and not robots. I guess you could say that she was an android, but alright, anyway. The way Christina just threw Vesper into the role of being controlled was absolutely amazing. She could have played it reluctantly, trying to fight back, holding herself down to minimal attacks that wouldn't do a lot of damage. But instead, she absolutely relished the opportunity, threw herself into the role of being controlled, and even used the very power-ups that viewers were paying for to help the Rangers to beat the life out of Eddie. Considering the connection that the two had been forming, not only in this session but over the others, it was just absolutely heartbreaking to watch her just beating the snot out of him and him not fighting back. Which also kind of reminds me I should also give some credit to Andre for Eddie's reaction of just not trying to attack her back, trying to help her, what's going on, let me help you, try to remember. It was just a very poignant moment from both of them. And now each of the Rangers is captive in one way or another, and things seem even darker when they were when Jack was about to die. Now, even Malika has said, the Rangers always win. It's just going to be really interesting to see how they get themselves out of this one, and that's a thought that I can remember having for all of my favorite episodes of Power Rangers. A Nest of Vespers gets another 5 out of 5. That's going to wrap up another Power Rangers Hyperforce session review. Thank you all so much, as always, for watching. I would like to apologize for this coming out a little bit late. Just dealing with some personal issues that kind of delay videos. I'm doing my best to work on that so things get out on a regular schedule, so thank you very much for your patience. Make sure to like the video by clicking the like button right down below. In the comments below, I would say let me know what you thought about this session, but I mean, it was awesome, right? So just tell me why this session was awesome, and you can let me know what you thought of my review of the session. Make sure to subscribe to the channel to see all of my videos, and ring that bell, get your notifications set up, so that you are notified whenever I post brand new videos, just like this Power Rangers Hyperforce session review.
Incoming transmission. Incoming transmission.
Hey there folks, this is Editing Sean on a Thursday night, a cold Thursday night, hence the pajamas. Just putting together this video that you just watched, Hyperforce Session 6. And as I was editing the video, it occurred to me, this past Tuesday, the 5th, the 7th session of Hyperforce was actually postponed due to the wildfires in the Los Angeles area. As far as I could tell, the Hyper RPG studios weren't impacted in any way where there's like damage or anything. It was simply that both Malika Lim and Peter Sudarso have asthma, and the air quality just wasn't really good for anyone there, and they couldn't get the studio sealed up, and it was just a bad time. As far as I saw, they are getting back to the studio, and they're saying that next week on the 12th, the Hyperforce session will go on as scheduled. But having that in mind, it just kind of occurred to me that I didn't really feel like having the tag on my video where I talk about donating to my channel, which I did do for this video, with that kind of hovering over not only in general, but specifically having impacted Hyperforce. I feel like I should once again just have a little call to action for you guys to support that instead. I will tell you about something very interesting I found. So I Googled donations California wildfires to find a reputable charity for you folks to donate to. And a little widget popped up directly from Google, allowing you to donate straight through them. You don't even have to have a Google account. You can do a guest checkout to donate straight through them. And it says that the money is handled by the Center for Disaster Philanthropy. And they direct it to the local charities that need it the most. So that seems really cool. The one downside to that, I will say, is that when you donate through them, you can only choose between donating $10, $50, and $250. I'd imagine that probably has something to do with fee thresholds as far as certain amounts of donations, but still it would be nice for them to let you choose to donate any amount that you want to. But that's a very quick and convenient way for you to do that. But also, if you do just Google donations California wildfires, right below that little widget comes up 3 stories in top stories about where to send your donations, what they need, etc., etc. So Google it, That's one little call to action that I can contribute to the cause, if you will, for this week. Don't donate to my channel. Just find a reputable charity to help with donations and relief for those terrible California wildfires. All right, that being said, I will toss it back to filming Sean to tag the video. Until next time, heroes, may the power protect you, and go Hyperforce. Marv decides, therefore, that they should probably keep information about where they are close to where they are, and realize that perhaps this isn't their future that they came from. They see M's pickup. Marv is still concerned that this might not be an actual so it would be hard to get back to even if they wanted to. I'm going to eat my own hands. The Rangers make plans to meet up with their counterparts to form a counteroffensive, and yep, the Rangers start making plans to meet up with their fellow Rangers in this timeline, and M confirms the alternate history part. Vesper, on the other hand, sees Chaz and his 2 stuck-up parents, notices how nice Chaz is, and indeed one grinder has. But the Rangers never picked up on this. And after the break, M fills everybody. They tell her that she needs a way out of the RV herself, but she seems oddly dismissive. Marv gives M her. She tells him to grab. She tells him. He tells her. She tells him to grab the hammer. Is an entirely different story.